Okay, hello. So for this Fearless Fridays, I'm here with Kit Whelan, who I met at the 7 and 7 Digital Nomad Conference where I was speaking back in October. So Kit, I'd love for you to start by telling us who you are, what you were doing before, and what you're doing now.
All right. Well, it's so good to be here, Anna, and I'm so glad to be talking with you again. It's always a pleasure.
Likewise.
As you said, I'm the founder of the 7 and 7 Digital Nomad Conference, but that is, as crazy as that may seem, that's a small portion of what I do. So now I also host the Nomad and Spice podcast for
Hmm.
location independent women. I run a social media consultancy, and that's what I've been doing for the last, oof, more than 9 years. So, going way back to before that, I used to, I actually, right before I started my business, I was working on the 2008 Obama campaign
Hmm.
in the social media department. So, that is actually how I got into this whole business of consulting because thank God my boss from the campaign, when I was finished and thought, oh, I guess I better go back and get a full-time job. I had been working in ad agencies prior to the campaign. So I thought, I guess I go back to an ad agency now. She stopped me and said, hey, I do a social media consulting business and I could use some help. And would you like to do some things with me? And I was like, yes, that sounds so much better than having a full-time job. So she's the one who trained me and got me up to speed, told me how to make an invoice for the first time, all those sort of very basic things. And here, 9 years later, I still take her out to lunch every time I'm in Los Angeles because I'm like, thank you for taking me into this lifestyle.
That's amazing. I think that's the first time I've heard it happen that way. So I'm curious, why were you sort of not so keen on going back to a full-time job? What was it about this proposal from her that so appealed to you?
Well, I think that I remember when I got out of university and I moved to LA and my goal was like move to LA and get a job at an ad agency. And I did that. Thankfully, it was before the Great Recession in the States.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not that hard to get a job then. So within 3 weeks, I had a job. And I remember hanging up the phone after getting the job offer and thinking, is that it? Like that's it. I had worked really hard in school and gotten into a good university. I'd worked really hard in university and done all these things so I could have a good resume. And then I got the good job. And then that it was like that was the last, societal finish line in terms of like then I think it was just, going after promotions and things. And I enjoyed my job. I really did. But after a few years, it was just so repetitive, and I didn't feel like, I desperately wanted to travel more than the paltry 2 weeks a year that they give you in American companies. And I just wanted more out of life, like more adventure, more excitement, more. And so that's why I originally quit my full-time job to work on the Obama campaign because I felt like I was doing something that was bigger than myself. And I wanted that to continue. And I just really wasn't looking forward to going in what my mind was backwards. For me, going back to a full-time job would have been going backwards.
And how long were you on the campaign for? How long does that last?
I wasn't on the campaign very long at all, about like from August to November. So it was just very brief, but very intense.
Can imagine. And at what
Yeah.
point did you sort of take that business on the road? So when you first started working with her consultancy, was that still based locally?
It was, yeah. So I was with my partner Nick at the time. He and we travel together now, but we've been together for 16 years. So we were living together in LA, and he still had a full-time job. So I was starting this consultancy on my own, working with my old boss on some clients. And back then in early 2009, it was very much like teaching businesses like what YouTube is and how you can use it.
Yes, yeah.
They didn't know, they had never heard of Twitter. And it was exciting and fun, but yeah, I was mostly like working in a home office while my partner still went off to his full-time job. And I was like, this is better for me work-wise because, I had flexibility, but I was still desperate to travel and have more freedom. And I was pretty much like, I love LA, I really do, but I was ready to I was like, I'm good to go somewhere else now. And so we actually were on the 2 weeks vacation that we had planned a while ago. So my partner's 2 weeks of vacation, we went to Norway. And while we were there, his company, it had been acquired by AOL, a big firm in the States. It was a little startup. And while we were away in Norway, they decided to fire everyone and shut the company down. Because,
Okay.
you know, they like happens often in the tech world, they just bought it for the technology. So everyone's like panicking, sending him texts like, oh my God, we're all being fired. And I was like, yes, this is great.
Perfect.
I was the only person who had that reaction. So I was like, great, this is wonderful. We're going back to LA. I think within 2 weeks, we'd gotten a storage unit, we'd put stuff away, and like bought one-way tickets to Singapore because I was like, we are going. Because he got a nice severance package from the company. So I was like, you can figure it out on the road. And he did end up doing a little startup with some of the people from that company. And that's how he like sort of found his way into his own consulting and freelancing career. So it was more like I was just so desperate to travel that like I was like, yeah, and then we can work on the way and make money that way, and then we keep traveling. And honestly, we didn't think it would work. We thought we would like run out of money in like 6 months and have to come back. And that almost happened because we were really focused on the travel. But it was just, I was so desperate to change my situation. I was like, we're going to figure it out on the fly. And we did. It's been 9 years.
Amazing. And what were the challenges that you were figuring out at the beginning? I guess let's start with that, when you first started traveling together.
Whew. I mean, back then, like I said, I was so focused on the travel that, you know, taking time for work still seemed like an inconvenience. Whereas now I like have 3 businesses that I take a lot of pride in, and I spend a lot of time working on. You know, my perspective has definitely shifted. But back then, I think it was remote work was still very new. Like there was like Upwork, I think it was called Elance at that time, but you know, there was that kind of thing, and I did get some clients through there, but it was a lot harder, like with potential clients, like, well, where are you located? What are you doing? And they were like a little nervous, like, I don't know. And I would always have to be like, just give me 3 months and we'll see how it goes. And then they always loved it. Okay. But it was, in those days, it was very hard to convince people that like what I was doing wasn't weird. Because I guess it was. And the personal nature, I think that honestly, for me, being like a 24/7 couple was great. But I know that's really challenging for a lot of people. But for us, it was, you know, as long as you've got a good pair of headphones and you can take your, you know, time and space for yourself, generally, like we've done pretty well as the whole, like, we're together all the time
16
thing.
years,
Honestly,
that's amazing.
Yeah. The biggest challenge for us has been in the last 3 years since we founded the 7 and 7 conference together. So my partner, Nick, he is a co-founder with me in the conference. And so that, like having a business together, that is way more challenging than having separate businesses and traveling together.
But you do also still have your separate businesses, as you said, so you do have some kind of separation there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I like we have rules now where I'm like, if you need to tell me something, you can write it in Slack, you know, about the business.
Keep it separate to the personal stuff.
Yeah. It's like we have designated meeting times, and then we have Slack, because I'm like, you know, otherwise you end up like talking about business in bed, and it's just that's not good at all.
I know that feeling. Great. Okay, and where did you get the support then? It sounds like you had that great contact early on in the days, you know, and your partner now with Nick. You know, where have you sort of overcome these different challenges along the way?
Yeah, that's, I think, for me, the biggest thing that you could possibly need for a nomad lifestyle isn't just like making money from your laptop. It's the fact that you need community and support. Like that is the most important thing. And in early days, when I was more focused on like travel than work, and it was mostly just Nick and I, like we would meet people wherever we went, of course, and that was fun, but we didn't have that kind of long-term support network. I mean, obviously our families, like they thought what we were doing was cool, even though sometimes they'd be like, are you ever coming back? You know? And, but it wasn't the same as having a really solid support network. So honestly, we stumbled into one when it was about 4 years in, I think, to our nomad journey. We happened to be in Berlin, summer of 2013 to 2014. And there happened to be a lot of other nomads there at the time. And that was still during the stages when if you met another nomad, it was like, you know, finding a unicorn. It was like, oh my gosh, you're a nomad too? We're best friends now. And so you just, because there were so few of us. And so we just sort of started hanging out with these people, having movie nights, hanging out every weekend, co-working together every day during the week. And it was like having this little nomad family for the first time. And that's when I realized like that's what we'd been missing. And since then, I've just worked to build that for myself. Like I have really cultivated a good group of friends. Like here, I'm in Playa del Carmen, and Nick and I said we were coming here. And then two of our other best friends were like, we should come too. Aww. And then other people we're with were like, we're going to come too. And there's about 8 of us or 9 of us here right now for a couple of months. And so, you know, we co-work together, we hang out, we have beach days and pool days and game nights. And it's just so wonderful to have that. And like I said at the beginning, like I sort of started a conference to make more friends and to like show other nomads that like this is what you need, like this is what you're missing. Because over the years I've seen a lot of people drop out of the lifestyle, and usually that's because they lack community. They said they felt lonely. They said they missed having that community. So often they end up going back home. You don't, and that's a perfectly valid choice, but you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You can absolutely gather your own network and your own nomadic family and have that support system no matter where you are.
That is so interesting. I think I had the same experience as you said, that when you first start, it's so exciting to be so free and to travel, and that's all you think about. And I call it my hippie phase, when I didn't even think about the money at all. It was just travel and, oh, this is amazing. Exactly. Then I started thinking about the business, and then, there's another aspect to it, which is the community. And I think, as you said, that longer term piece is where, because the fact that you've done this for 9 years obviously means that it is sustainable. You just need to find a way to, bring the elements that you're missing, I guess, create that and create a community if necessary to have
exactly
that.
Yeah, no, if you don't have community in anything you do, it doesn't have to be just nomading, but if you don't have a community, like you're going to fail. You're going like, because there are going to be days where you're falling flat on your face, or like me today, my Wi-Fi went out at my apartment. It's not very reliable anyway, so I was like, hey friends, can I come over to your apartment and use your Wi-Fi while I do this lovely call with Anna? And they were like, yeah, of course. And like having people to rely on, having people to support you, it's so wonderful. People who push you in your business and in your life, and who give you good suggestions, and who are there for you when you just need to rant about, whether it's your business or your mother, or, the fact that you can't find, good fitting t-shirts in Southeast Asia, whatever it is, having people who totally get you.
Yeah. And you have Wi-Fi, all the important criteria there.
The most important thing in the nomad hierarchy of needs. It's like, it's like Wi-Fi might be above like shelter, it's like we need Wi-Fi first.
Love it. Yeah. Oh, amazing. And what is the best part then? It sounds like probably the community is sort of part of what makes your lifestyle so great now, but what do you most enjoy about the way you're traveling and living and working now?
Yeah, I think that the best part for me is the community, but I think still the best part of the nomad lifestyle in general is just the freedom and the ownership of my time. I think when I had a full-time job and lived in LA, and had a great job and a great apartment and great friends, but what chafed me a lot was the fact that, I was living for someone else's schedule and working for someone else's goals, like the owner of the company. And I had no time to myself. You end up just living for the weekend because, by the time you've gotten home from your job and you're just exhausted, you like watch a TV show and go to bed, and there's no time to do anything for yourself. And now, even if I'm stressed because I've taken on too many projects, I end up feeling like I have to remind myself, like, I chose this. I'm the one who gave myself this work. I'm the one who chose to do these projects. I'm the one, like, I decide when I wake up. I decide when I work. I decide where I live and what I eat, and everything is my decision. So if at any point I'm miserable, it's my own fault. But there's no boss to blame. But yeah, I think my favorite part of the lifestyle is definitely still just the freedom.
I think freedom comes up in every single interview I've ever done, and it's definitely something I value too. So, and managing your time. Someone asked me the other day if you can ever go back to a normal job. I'm like, just having someone give me feedback on something, I'm like, I don't like it. I don't like people telling me what to do.
Exactly. Like even when a client has like a little too much feedback, you're just like, Exactly. I think that even if I, were to stop traveling altogether, which I can't, it's hard to imagine, but like, let's say I got a base and I traveled far less, like I still having the freedom, like the work freedom and the lifestyle, like that I could do whatever I want. Like I could live in one place more easily than I could like have a boss at a full-time job
Yeah.
again.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting comparison. And I think, as you said, it's the best part, but it is also a challenge, right? Because you are literally, the buck stops with you. As you said, you can't blame anyone else. You literally have to make every decision yourself. It's good, but it also can be stressful, I suppose, if they're difficult decisions and if you end up in a bad situation, then you only have yourself to blame. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably been one of the hardest things to learn. And I think that's not a digital nomad journey. That's just a like being your own boss journey. Is you have to figure out. Like I'm someone who does not generally take to routines, and discipline is not a word that someone would use to describe me. I'm definitely more free flowing. And when you're your own boss, you do have to impose
yeah.
things on yourself. You do have to say, okay, I have to do this now and this now and this now. And there's always going to be things that you don't want to do. It always gets pushed to the bottom of the to-do list that you still have to get around to. And I think that is one of the hardest challenges and things that's probably taken me a lot longer to adapt to than it would other people who are more adjusted to who like having routines and lots of to-do lists and things and structure. For me, that's been extremely hard, but because I've forced myself, because I have 3 businesses that I work on, I have to. And it's sometimes I'm like, why did I do this to myself? This is so ridiculous. Because like back in early days, I was like, I just had, I worked a few hours a day, and then I would like go to the beach or go on a hike, and like that was it. Now I'm like, oh my God, my to-do list never ends.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not just you. I think by definition, those of us who are attracted to this freedom lifestyle, I think, do struggle with that. But I had the same realization that a bit of framework and structure is what allows you the freedom, right? Because in theory, if you didn't do any of that structure and discipline, you wouldn't have any money coming in. You wouldn't feel free to do all the other stuff. You wouldn't be able to do everything else. So I've definitely had that same process. And like you, maybe sometimes do too much, but, it's all about a balance, isn't it?
Exactly. And I've even found myself imposing like not weekends. Like it used to be like, well, I can work anytime. But the problem is when you can work anytime, you do.
You do, yeah.
And so I found myself like working on like Christmas morning and working on the weekends and working on, when I should not be working. So like imposing the more like I work from like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Like those are working hours. After that, unless there's like something, an emergency or a deadline, no. And then don't work on the weekends again unless there's like an emergency or a deadline. Like you just don't do it. Like I've imposed the old structure on myself because it existed for a reason. Like weekends are very important to take.
Yes, it's true. And you can take those weekends when you want, I suppose. But yeah, definitely not Christmas morning. And some evenings off, I think, is important too, to have that wind down before you go to bed. Otherwise, it's, you fill every minute. And I think you make the excuse, at least I do, I love my work and I don't mind working all the time. But I think that's a dangerous justification.
Oh, completely. So it's funny you bring that up. A friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, actually just posted on Facebook yesterday about how she loves her work. Like you always make that caveat, I love what I do, but like she was feeling that she was always, because her work is community building and it's like a nomad community. She said that she's always identified as it, like even when she's out and about and like having drinks with friends, it's like she's talking about work. And I was like, I completely relate to this since I run a conference for digital nomads, and like all of my best friends are attendees at the conference. I can't go through a happy hour or a beach day or, a games night without someone being like, oh, you know what you should do at the next 7 and 7. And of course, that's wonderful. It's good that people care so much, but it's like at the point where you're all, you need to sort of put that structure in place. And there was a guy who commented on her post that was like, oh, but that just means that you love your work and that, you're doing what you're meant to be doing. And I was like, I was like, no, like she's tired and she wants a break and she's allowed to not talk about work for like a few evenings a week, and I think that a lot of nomads, especially a lot of freelancers, we put that on ourselves. A lot of people who own their own businesses. Oh, I love my work. Well, of course you do, but that doesn't mean you want to be doing it all the time.
No, that is tricky. I think with my coaching, actually, both the sort of business side and the lifestyle stuff, because there is the life coaching kind of borders, overflows into sort of friendship. And people often say to me, oh, you're coaching me. It's like, I'm not. I'm just talking to you. But of course, where do you draw that line? And likewise, lots of people will ask for business advice. Or chat about that. They just want to meet for a coffee or a call or something. Yes, that's okay, but that is also what I get paid for. So I need to, either have some time off and have a coffee with a friend, or you need to pay me for, my consulting services kind of thing. And that is quite difficult, I think, as you said, having those boundaries. So I can.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure it's, especially for what you do, it must be like really challenging to separate, like, I'm just a friend giving polite advice, and oh no, I'm going to charge you an hourly fee for this.
Yeah, but I'll send the bill.
Yeah.
No, and I also do love it, so that is hard. It's certainly my own fault rather than anyone else's, but yeah. And what advice would you give then, maybe to someone, if you can think that far back, to someone just at the start of the journey, or something, someone who's a bit further along, maybe someone's feeling lonely, any kind of advice you want to give for any moment in the journey?
Yeah. Well, this is appropriate because we actually just released an episode of the Nomad and Spice podcast on advice you'd give your pre-nomad self.
Oh, amazing.
So I have thought about this. And because it was actually really hard, because I like thinking like, what would I have listened to? Because, I would say, oh, don't go so fast, slow down, things are going to be there. I would not have listened to that advice when I was starting. I wanted to see and do everything, And so in terms of advice I might have listened to is like, stress less, like things will work out. You don't need to have everything planned, and like failure is good. You will learn from it. And I think, like I said earlier, the most important thing is to find yourself a community. Like, when people say, oh, I tried digital nomading for 3 months and I didn't like it. Well, that's just a vacation. And also, maybe you didn't like it because you were trying, like, people say, oh, I tried to get in with like maybe the expat community where I went, or mix with the locals. And that's great. That is absolutely what you should be doing. You should be integrating into the local community. But those people don't understand the lifestyle that you're living. And that is not the kind of long-term support that you need. That's just part of life. And you will always be an oddity to what, our group lovingly refers to as muggles, J.K. Rowling's muggles. Like, you will always be an oddity. Like, they'll be like, what, you don't have a house? You're just traveling? You work from your computer? How do I do that? You kind of end up like, you might feel sometimes like you're coaching people. Like, you go to a party at some expat's house or some local's house, and you end up coaching people on how to do what you do. This happened to me yesterday in a ice cream shop. I was working because they have like super fast Wi-Fi, and the guy came over and he was like, are you a freelancer? And I was like, yes, basically, and I run my own business. And he started asking me all these questions and telling me about he wants to be a designer and what he wants to do. And like, you just end up coaching them. And that's great. But you can't always be the person who is the one who's giving advice, or the one who's weird, the one who people go, oh, well, that's unusual.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't want to do. You need to have people in your life who completely get you, who are doing what you're doing and can support you through that and have been through those situations. And like, that's the most important thing.
That's so interesting. And you can have that community, as you said, the locals, your existing friends and so on. It's not to say you have to turn your back on those, but yeah, having people who are ahead of you at the same level, who can, absolutely. That's great advice there. Can I ask you, just made me think, when you said freelancer, when people ask you, what do you do? What do you answer? What sort of do you relate to? I'm just curious, because it's something we all struggle with.
Yeah, it depends on who's asking. Yeah. Sometimes if it's like, a taxi driver, I'm like, I work for myself. I'll just keep it kind of very simple, because I don't want to get into it, because it's a long answer. But I usually would say, like, I run my own social media consulting business, and I also run a conference for digital nomads, and I have a podcast for location independent women. And then people usually just kind of glaze over because they don't understand what most of that means. And then they'll say, like, you work with Facebook? And I'm like, yes, I work with Facebook.
Okay, but I love that sort of 3 projects. It does expand. And then if somebody was interested and genuinely wanted to know, they would ask. And okay.
Exactly. And I got some, this is another reason to have a good community. I got some critical feedback from a friend of mine the other day. I was doing a podcast and he listened to it and he was like, you need to work on your intro. You did not mention this thing that you do and this thing that you do. I was like, oh, okay. He was just, giving me critical feedback that I needed. So because you can pitch yourself better. And, that's the best thing about having a great group of friends who know you really well. They're like, you're doing amazing. You're doing all these great things. Even if you think you're not, they're like, no, you have all these amazing things you're doing and the world needs to know about it. And let me help you spread the message that you're trying to spread
Yeah.
and make the impact on the world that you're trying to make.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. So not just sort of giving critical feedback and so on, but really supporting you and reminding you to celebrate your successes, I hope, as well. I think that's really important.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because I know a lot of us, you downplay. You're like, oh yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
that was good. But it's your friends who are gonna really remind you of like, no, you did an amazing thing. Like you launched this great thing, or you had this great event, or whatever it is. Your friends are gonna be the ones who are your biggest cheerleaders.
Yeah. Love that. Oh, Kit, I always love chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing. I hadn't heard a lot of that, so really happy to have had this excuse to talk to you. Where can we find you in the online space for these various projects that you're running?
Yes, well, to find me personally, I'm Kit Whelan, KitWhelan on Twitter, Instagram, all the things. And then my projects are 7and7.co and nomadandspice.com. So, and similarly at Nomad and Spice on Twitter, at 7and7co on Twitter and Instagram. So please just come find us. Tell us what you think.
Love it. I'll link to all those things. I'll find all your different platforms. But thank you so much. No, thanks again, Kit. Lovely, and some really fantastic advice there. Great to hear how well you're doing as well.
Thank you so much, Anna. This was so much fun.
Thank you.